What's up, everyone? It's Captain Kyle Smith, and this week I sat down for a morning meeting with City of San Diego Firefighter Greg Heid. Greg's been on the path since coming on the job a few short years ago, and he shares his tips on how you can do it too. Hope you guys enjoy it. All right, hey Greg, welcome to the bullpen. Thanks for meeting me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
Yeah, and you came highly recommended from a mutual friend of ours. He said you have a really interesting story that people out there are going to be really interested to hear about. But before we dig into that and your first alarm, how was Thanksgiving in the midst of a pandemic at the Heid household?
It was good. The Hyde household is usually a big family affair. This year we had a few less people there, but we still had a good time. We got a new member to the family, being little Ruby, my brother's daughter, so my mom's first granddaughter. So that was fun having her around, and we just had a good time together.
Oh, awesome,
How
man.
was yours?
It was good. It was good. It was also sort of muted compared to the way it normally would be, but it was really nice. We had my brother-in-law down and his girlfriend, and yeah, we had a good time. For me, man, Thanksgiving is just about that. It's about being together with family. We did a Zoom call with the extended family, which was great. Not the same as it normally would be, but we're making the best of it like everybody else. So it's all good.
Awesome. Yeah, looking forward to the holiday season. My brother's got a tree farm, so we're all over there as a family running that show and having a good time with it. And it's always a good time to be around family during this time.
Yeah, for sure. This is one of my favorite times of the year. While I don't like the daylight savings, I love just the bringing the family together, and even celebrating holidays at the firehouse is a really enjoyable thing. It's about like the mindset, whether you're at the station or
Mhm.
whether you're at home during a pandemic. It's you make the best of it, and that's it. So, but anyway, man, you ready to get into your first alarm?
Yeah, let's do it.
All right. Well, you will know that a first alarm assignment at the San Diego Fire Department consists of 4 engines and a truck. But here at the firehouse, I'll ask you 4 questions. You give us 1 piece of advice. That sound good?
Alrighty, sounds good.
All right. Well, you know that you're going to be first alarm, or you're going to be first in on your first alarm, and you know that when you're first in, you got to give a size up. So that's who you are, where you work, and how long you've been doing it.
Yeah, so my name's Greg Heid. I work for San Diego Fire and Rescue Department Station 45 with hazmat there on C Division. As far as how long I've been on, got hired in 2015, so we're just coming up on 5 years here. And I've been bouncing around. I did the paramedic school with the department, so that's new to me. I'm still learning that and getting used to it. And then hazmat's also new to me, and I'm loving that so far. So just having a good time and learning all I can.
Yeah, awesome, man. We won't hold either of those things against you with the fact that you're a paramedic or B a hazmatter. But for those
Hey,
people
this is
that
about money, right?
hey, absolutely, absolutely. Nothing wrong with that. For those folks that are listening that don't know where Station 45 is, Station 45 is in Mission Valley, San Diego. It's right where right across the street from where uh, the Chargers. We don't really talk about them anymore, but
Yeah,
it's
the
this,
stadium's coming down right now.
yeah, the right across the street from the old Charger football stadium. So that's where Station 5 is. Well, right on, man. So just jumping right into this, Greg, you are aggressively trying to take action. You're trying to increase your income, which I love to see and hear by going to paramedic school for our department. That gives you a little pay differential. For going to hazmat, that gives you another pay differential, which is great. You're being accountable for your own actions, which is fantastic. Prior to coming on, did you have any background in financial education or financial literacy? Is this something you just been learning on the way?
Yeah, so prior to getting hired here, I got hired fairly young. I was very, very lucky and fortunate. I got hired at the age of 20, and now I'm 25 years old. So, to be honest, at 20 years old, I didn't have much as far as financial literacy. Luckily for myself, I had a good upbringing, and my parents did a great job, I think, in explaining a lot of this stuff to me and getting me involved early on. Whether it was just, from second grade starting a savings account and being able to go to a bank and having to be able to write checks for different things, just learning that process early on was big for me. And then obviously getting hired, you start making a little bit of money, and you want to figure out what the best thing to do with it is. And I had the unique opportunity to get hired young, still live at home for a little bit, and then kind of just see where it could take me. So before getting hired, no, I didn't have much of a background in financial literacy other than what my parents had established in me. And since being hired, I've taken every opportunity, like watching your program here and just talking with different people on the job, and also doing my own research just to find the best ways to, you know, financial independence and doing the right thing for myself and my retirement.
Oh, that's awesome, man. It's funny. I was just talking to Jim Raines. He's on the board at the San Diego Firefighter Credit Union, and he was saying that financial independence, man, is a choice. It's a choice that you make in your day-to-day grind. You make choices whether you're going to go out and waste your hard-earned money or if you're going to go out and start saving it and investing it. He said it is absolutely a choice, and the ones that he sees do the best are the ones that are intentional about those choices that they are making. And if you start early like you did, man, you started when you were 20 years old, socking away money, trying to invest and learning as much as you can, you're going to just be on your way down the line, man. I'm so stoked to hear that. And even the minimal amount of financial education that your folks gave you, starting a savings account in second grade, man, that's a huge thing. It's a
Yeah.
planting the seed,
Oh,
right? It's planting the seed to get you down the path, man. I think that's amazing. Now, can you talk? You got hired in our one of our tiered systems. So for people that are not from San Diego that are listening to this, not from the city of San Diego that are listening to this, can you just speak a little bit about the different tiers of retirement systems that we have now?
yeah. So the one most familiar, obviously, is the one that I'm in right now. But prior to that, we had the pension in varying degrees. Whether the percentages were more, and then it kind of tiered down as it got closer to what we are in now, which is the Prop B. But prior to where we're at now, we're in a pension, and some people had a drop, which allowed them to store up money in a savings account over their last 5 years, and then that went away. And then it was the pension. And I don't know, what was your pension rate
Yeah,
at?
yeah. So I'm in a pension system myself, but I'm in the tier that doesn't have retiree health, doesn't have the drop, doesn't
Mhm.
have the 13th check, all that stuff.
Yeah. So, and then after that, it came to us, Prop B in 2012. And when we were hired, no pension was given, although, who knows what will come of that in the future, whether it will come back or not. But we're going to talk about, where we are today and what we can do with it. So with us, Prop B, they created a SPSPH for us, which is Supplemental Pension Plan. And it's basically, in essence, a 401k for us. Some people call it a 401a, some people call it different things, but basically what it is it's a qualified retirement plan. And with that, I think one thing we kind of have to focus on is there's going to be a change in mentalities. So from the people with pensions, your mentality may be at the simplest level is, what income do I need in retirement? Do I need $80,000 in retirement per year? And if that's the case, how many years do I need to work at this job, to reach that high one year and cover $80,000 of expense per year, right? So let's say, every year you work, you gain another 2.7% or 3% of your pension, and then you get up to $80,000. Let's say you're making $100,000 as your base pay, you hit $80,000 and 80% of your base pay, and you got your retirement there, and then you can feel fairly comfortable with it, obviously, along with extra savings that you have. For us in this new SPSBH plan, we're going to have to start thinking about it differently, because we can't say, oh, we need $80,000 per year in retirement, or whatever it may be. I'm just throwing out that number. And then, our amount in our SPH doesn't exactly correlate to that. So what I'm going to be talking about is basically how we in this new plan can kind of figure out how much money we're going to need in retirement, and how to, base our calculations on, all right, where do we need to end up and how much money do we need to invest early on? So let's start with the SPSBH. I think we're given a really good base to start off of. The SPSBH is 11% pre-tax that we contribute into our retirement, and then the city matches that 11%, 100% into that same pre-tax account. So basically, we're ending up with 22% of not our base pay, but our full pay, including overtime, and all of that's pre-tax money. So we're not taxed on it then, but we'll be taxed in retirement. Another important thing to realize later on is, when you're planning in retirement, you're going to have to pay taxes on that money. So something to realize. But then we get to this point where we're like, well, I'm throwing in 22%. What does that mean for me? For you guys who may be in the pension, you're going to say, well, I've put 10 years on. I know that that equates to potentially 30% of my high 1 year. For us, that 30% of high 1 year, it's just a number in a bank account. So what I think is important is early on for guys to kind of start planning on what is this going to be for you. Let's start doing some calculations and say, well, if I want my interest produced off my SPSPH account to basically cover my income, what do I need that interest to be at? Oftentimes when you go to a financial planner, they say, oh, well, we'll plan on, 5% in retirement or 3% in retirement being a conservative number that you're going to receive. And so I think that's something to think about early on is, well, what's my end goal? How much money am I trying to save up in this account? And then you'll realize whether you're going to be fully funded in retirement or whether you're going to need excess funding. So, I'd like to get that word out to some of the newer employees and start looking at this earlier rather than, just leaving it, set it and forget it kind of thing. Take a look at it every year, evaluate it. I ran some numbers, for some of the guys and basically let's say you're that employee. We talked about $80,000 a year, for someone with a pension. They get to $100,000 and they're receiving 80% of that. And that's their $80,000 a year. For us, if you want to receive $80,000 in a year in retirement, I ran it on two different numbers. You get that 3% return, very conservative. You get that 5% return, a little bit less conservative in retirement. So for us, that 3% is going to be $2.66 million. Okay, $2,666,000, and a 5% rate of return, $1,600,000. So kind of benchmarks just to look at, whether you need $80,000 in retirement or you need a lot more than that, or like every other employee in the fire department, you're leaving to Idaho and maybe you only need $20,000 a year. Whatever it may be, you take it for what it's worth and you start to reach a goal and you say, well, right now I need X amount of money in retirement because I need these expenses to be covered. So that's where you start and you look from there. So that's one, the SPSPH. And then we can transition into the second option, which is our 401k. Your 401k, another good option, although this one doesn't have a match with it. So your 401k is not mandatory like your SPSPH. If you wanted to, you could just leave it empty your whole career, or you could start funding it. So why would someone fund it? You'd fund your 401k for a number of reasons. First being that it like your SPSPH is a qualified plan. So that means that it has tax advantages. So when you throw money into your 401k, and I'll ask you, Kyle, if let's say I throw $500 into my 401k, how much do you think that's going to affect my paycheck, my take-home paycheck?
If you're contributing $500 to a 401k?
Yeah. What do you think the general thought on that in the department is?
Well, that it'd be too much for most of our folks to afford.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and they say $500 into your 401k. Well, that's going to be $500 less per paycheck that I'm going to receive. But it's not quite so, because when you put that $500 into your 401k, it's not taxed. Mm-hmm. So really what it is it's about $375 less that you see in take-home pay, depending on your tax rates. So for someone like myself, let's say my tax rate is around 25%, including federal and California and all that kind of stuff. Mm-hmm. Well, 25% of my tax, if I throw in $500, all I'm going to see is a $375 decrease. Mm-hmm. So the more money you put into that account, the more money you're actually saving that you're not paying in taxes in the meantime. Mm-hmm. So I think that's something for people to realize is when you're putting money into your 401k, you may actually be saving that $125, let's say, and now that money's going to work for you. Mm-hmm. Now that's something that you're investing. Mm-hmm. So I think go for it.
I was just going to say, no matter what the case is, whether or not somebody could afford $500 or $375 it's not besides the point. I'm not trying to say that, but the point I think you're trying to make is that it's achievable, it's doable, but you have to start somewhere. I mean, even if a $375 hit on your paycheck is too much, is $25 too much? No. Everybody listening to this could afford to invest $25 out of their paycheck into a 401k system. I don't care how tight money is. You can buckle up and you can find $25 in your budget to invest, so that long term that money's going to grow and turn into something potentially really great. So I love that point.
Yeah, and even when you say that $25, even though it might be $25 to you that you're cutting out of your paycheck, well, you got to think of the extra $5 that you would have been taxed on that. So really, it's $30 going into your retirement. So a lot of people don't realize that even though it's maybe a small amount that you're cutting from your take-home pay, it shows up larger in your account because it's not taxed, and it's that non-tax money that's going to work for you in your investments.
Yeah.
So the reason,
just picking up on that, you will be, so that people are clear, you will be taxed on that when you withdraw it, when you sever service. So there is some planning, some forecasting that you will have to do to, and I think you're going to touch on what a Roth IRA might be here in a minute, but there's some tax ramifications depending on which one you decide to fund. And that's going to depend on where you're projecting your tax rate to be in retirement. So whatever method you pick, you have to pick something and you have to go for it. It's not enough. We're not going to be able to have the type of retirement that we want, that we deserve, just based on whatever SPSBH in your case, Greg, or a pension is in my case. That's probably not going to wind up being enough. And so the message that I'm hearing you try to get out, which I'm echoing full bore, is you have to do something on top of it.
Yeah. So you realize your SPSBH may not be enough, or maybe it is enough. You want to supplement it with your 401k. So with our 401k, just to touch on it in a simple form, you throw that money in there. It's pre-tax, so you're not taxed on that money. Right now, you're taxed on that money when you withdraw it. There are limits to it. So $19,500 is what you can put in there per year, which means $750 a paycheck if you're able and willing to make that that basically projection into your retirement account. And if you're not, you're able to put any increment you want in there. You can put it in paycheck per paycheck. You can come to the end of the year, save up your comp bucket and throw your comp bucket in there at the end. It doesn't have to be, a preset thing. You can do it when you have the money for it.
And $10. I think $10 a paycheck is the least amount you can put in.
The lowest. Yeah, that may be right. And you can look on your benefits. Go on your benefits, check it out, and you'll be able to figure out pretty easy. If not, give one of us a call, and we'll be able to help you through it, or give benefits a call themselves. So those are two similar options: your SPSBH, which is matched by the city; your 401k, which is just your money going in there, tax deferred, as you could say. Next option being the Roth IRA. So your Roth IRA looks at your tax advantage a little differently. You can fund your Roth. There are limitations to it. For this one, it's $6,000 a year. And your Roth, you put that money in, you've already been taxed on that money. So let's say you're earning money each year. You feel like you have a little extra money each month, or even at the end of the year when you get your taxes back, per se. You have the option to throw money into a Roth up to $6,000. And what that Roth does is it protects you from the ability to pay taxes really in the future on it. So when you throw that money in the Roth, you're throwing that money in the Roth, allowing it to grow with the assumption that in the future, that money is not going to be taxed, even the growth with it. And so that's a huge advantage. And that's part of the reason why the limit on it is so small. If the limit was $20,000, I think that everyone that could do it would be doing it, because they don't expect to be taxed on that money in the future at all. And oftentimes, if you talk to financial advisors, they're saying that's the money you want to hold on to the longest. That's the money you want to work for you the longest, because it's basically in a tax-free account from the moment you put it into. You paid taxes on it when you made the money, when you earned the income. But from there on out, you're not expecting to pay taxes on that. So
Yeah.
$6,000 in a Roth. One thing to realize is that Roth account is not something we per se offer with the city, but it is something that's available to everyone. You can go, online, whether through different brokerage accounts or brokerages, and basically request to fund a Roth. There are some limitations to it, so look online for those. But if you make too much money, sometimes a good problem to have. I believe for single people, it's somewhere around the $120,000 range, modified adjusted gross income. So that's after your, healthcare deductions, after your contributions to your SDFD. So you got to be making a pretty good amount of money to hit that mark there. And for married, it's essentially double that. It goes up, I want to say, in the $180,000 range or so. So that's something people can look up, and definitely something you can fund. And then when you talk about those advantages, it just gives you a different option in retirement. Some of your money in your 401k is pre-tax and is going to be taxed when you take it out. Your other money in your Roth is not going to be taxed. And so it gives you options in retirement from which accounts you kind of piece together. And that's something people are going to work with their CPAs in retirement and say, what's the best way for me to access the money that I have? And the goal is to try and have that money in many different locations that have different tax advantages so that you can kind of piece it together in the best way possible.
Yeah, that's perfect, man. And you kind of diversify some of your risks, some of the risk of the unknown. You don't know what tax bracket you're going to be in the future. We don't even know what the tax code is going to look like in the future. The tax code is thousands upon thousands of pages that is changing every year or two. So having that little hedge against the uncertainty of what the tax ramifications of all this stuff will be is really important. And I love that message. The other thing with the Roth that I do like is it's outside of your employer's sphere of influence, or outside of your employer's control. So like you were saying, the city doesn't offer a Roth IRA option to us. We can go outside to a brokerage, like let's say Vanguard or something, and you can have a portion of your net worth over in a brokerage account in a form of a Roth IRA that the city isn't involved in any way. So I have heard people talking about that as a reason to do that as well. So I do love that. Now let's say, Greg, let's project this thing out. And I was really diligent. I contributed the max amount I could, $750 every paycheck towards my 401k. I did that from the very beginning. That's on top of the 22% that was required of the SPSPH for those folks here in San Diego. Or if I'm just maxing out my 401k just somewhere else, another jurisdiction throughout the US. And I did this for 30 years. And at the end of that 30 years, I had this huge amount of money. Can you talk a little bit about ways to kind of protect that so that if I passed away unexpectedly or early, is there a way that I could protect my estate, so to speak?
Yeah, for sure. So on this note, let me give you a little bit of my background. Like I said earlier with Thanksgiving, I got a big, large family, and love my family and everything. Recently, in the last year and a half or so, my dad died. It was unexpected to us, and it affected me personally for sure, in my family life and how I view things. But I think also, and for the reasons of this podcast, I think it affected my outlook tremendously on how we prepare ourselves financially, whether for retirement or how we prepare ourselves and our families, for the future. So like I stated earlier, my parents were always involved from a young age, starting their savings account and doing all that kind of stuff. When my dad died, my mom kind of took it upon herself to say, hey, this is a learning process for all of us. So that's where we're going to touch on, wills and trusts a little bit, because I got the opportunity to pretty much sit down with my mom and with actually some of my other family members as well and say, how do we want to do this for the future, and what things can we learn, talking to lawyers, talking to whoever it may be, even from whether it's simply to how to pass down your house, how to pass down your place of living to other people, or if there's whether it's life insurance, whether it's your 401k, different money saved up, your retirement, how are you going to pass that along to your family so that they can succeed with it? So first, let's touch on trust and wills. All right, so to talk about these two things, we have a will and a trust. Wills are basically it's the most simple format, and you basically sit down and you are able to write out a document that states where you want your belongings to go. Oftentimes a will can be more informal. You can do it with witnesses, you can do it independently. It's always recommended, that you do something through a lawyer or through some other witness that you can sign so that we know that it's there and it was created prior to you dying. But the issue that people see with wills is that when you have a will and you die and let's say you're not married or your spouse has potentially already passed away and you're passing that on to the next generation, you're not just passing it on to your spouse. With a will, you have to go through something called probate to secure those whatever they may be, whether it's money, whether it's certain accounts, bank accounts, or whether it's even belongings. You might say, I have the right to these belongings because this was my dad. And the state of California may say, whoa, maybe you don't. Let's go through probate. Let's go through basically a legal process for you to prove that those are rightly due to you. And once, those, if it's a t-shirt or something like that, obviously they don't care about it. But once it hits a certain financial value, those are things that have to go through the probate process to get to you. So that's why I think a trust is recommended. And a trust, a living trust, as they call it, is a document. It's basically another person you create. And you could say the trust of Gregory Heid. And then that starts to become everything you own, everything you encompass. And it gives you the ability to, in that trust, designate where things are going to go in the future. As it were, if you died, that trust would still be a living thing saying, I'm giving this to so-and-so. My house is being split amongst these people. And it also, not only do you get tax advantages in something like that, where I want to say, I want to say it's California, or maybe in the US, it's somewhere around $10 million or $10.6 million or something like that, under that range, you're not taxed. But that's not really what it's about. It's about, after your death, giving people the opportunity to mourn, giving people the opportunity to, really go through the right process and not having them have more hardships just to acquire, the house that they already live in, or, the accounts that they're expecting to use to pay for your funeral, to pay for different expenses, or, merely to live after that if you're planning on retiring. So being on our job, being with the fire department, seeing, death wherever they may be, crazy car accidents, fires, medical aids, none of these, a lot of these aren't expected. We don't come upon scenes that everyone was saying, oh, this person was going to die. Oftentimes they come as a surprise. They come unprepared. So I think it's a good idea for us, whether you're 25 years old like myself, or, potentially, let's call it 60 years old and retiring. It's a conversation that I think is important to have with your family. And I think it's going to set them ahead, in the event that we leave them. So I think it's an important thing to pre-plan.
Yeah, man, I just could not agree with that anymore, Greg. First of all, I'm sorry for the loss of your dad. That has to be tough. But it really is incumbent upon all of us as first responders. Like you hit it right on the head. We see death every single day, and it's really not fair to leave all your assets to the nightmare that is probate. Probate is a system like you're talking about that can take months, if not years, to settle all of your affairs. And in the wake of that are your loved ones waiting for these things to be taken care of. You don't want to do that, but by all means, go set up a trust. It'll cost you a few hundred to a couple $1,000 to do. And it just outlines exactly explicitly what your wishes are. What's going to happen with the kids if you have kids that are underage? Who's going to be, God forbid, you and your significant other both pass away. What's going to happen with the kids? Who's going to be in charge of them? Who's going to be managing the assets that you want passed down to them until they become, of an age where they can be responsible for managing that stuff. So it really is vitally important, man. I'm really glad you brought that up.
Yeah, and one other thing to touch on that, Cal. Along with the trust, you also have the simple opportunity right now to go to your various accounts. Like us newer guys, you got the SPSBH. Right on there is a thing that says, state your beneficiaries. When you bring up that, it's like, there's no out of pocket cost for you. You go on there, you talk to your family members, you say, hey, I'm in a good retirement plan with my job, and I'm saving up money for it. In the event that I'm to die, I don't want to put a burden on you. So you have these opportunities, your 401k, your SPSBH, any of your brokerage accounts, your a Roth IRA, all those have the option for you simply just to put beneficiary on it. You could split it between 4 people, you could give it all to one person, and you can put, contingent beneficiaries upon that in the case that, unfortunately both those people could die, whatever it may be. That's another option for people just to simply do, and you could do that, sitting in your home today, log onto your account and take care of that.
That's perfect, man. That is really, really perfect. And it's a loving thing that you do for your family. Now, just kind of transitioning a little bit, is there a single step in your mind that people could take to kind of take control of their financial well-being?
Yeah, I think for me, that single step is budgeting. I think one of the things I did when I got hired is I started seeing a financial advisor, and some of the first questions they ask you, is how much money are you making? How much money do you plan to make in the future? Where do you see your progression? And then how much money are you spending? And basically they take a look at that and they say, okay, this is the amount of money in excess, or this is the amount of money that we're potentially negative and that we need to save up for or decrease in expenditures. And so budgeting, I think, is the first step for everyone, whether you're well set financially or falling a little bit behind and just trying to get the hang of it. You start with budgeting and you take a look at your income, your spending, and where you want to go in the future. What kind of excess funds do you need? Do you want to make a purchase of a home? Do you want to buy a new car? Do you want to retire early? Whatever it may be. So budgeting is the key to that. A couple things kind of stick out in budgeting to me as important steps with inside of it. The first being, do it on a regular basis. You don't just budget once and say, oh, these are my plans. Every month I take home X amount of money, I spend Y amount of money, and I have whatever left over. Every year I sit down, one, independently and do it, and then 2, I bring it into a financial advisor and I say, this is how the year went. With that, this is the expected progression for next year, and let's make plans based on it. If I have excess money, let's go ahead and fund that Roth IRA. Let's go ahead and fund the 401k a little bit more next year. If money's short a little bit, you can always kind of decrease that funding, or look for ways to increase it, whether it be work overtime shifts or even decrease your spending. So budgeting is huge in that sense. Another part of that budgeting process is kind of projecting for the future. So I use different calculators. You go online, and we talked about the 401k earlier, and you could simply type in 401k calculator. You could go on websites like Bankrate or whatever else. There's different websites. One of the ones that sticks out to me is Bankrate, and they give you a calculator, and you say, I'm funding my 401k, and I'm planning on funding, $500 every, biweekly into my 401k, and then you calculate that, and basically it starts to give you that general picture of where you are. And I think that's important for us, everyone, whether on our department or not, but also especially for those newer guys and gals on our department that are gonna at some point be looking at their account and saying, is this enough to retire? Well, if you have that progression of annual budgeting throughout all the past years, you can take a look at your spending and have a really good idea of where your spending is going to go in the future in retirement. You can say, I spent, this amount of money the last 10 years, the last 5 years, it increased maybe, or maybe it even decreased, maybe you paid off your home, whatever it may be. So budgeting gives you that ability to look back on history and make decisions for the future. And it also kind of guides your lifestyle and the way that you live, basically keeping yourself on track financially for whatever goals you want.
That's perfect, man. And for people that are listening that maybe aren't used to budgeting, have never done it, it's not like sitting down and penciling something out anymore. It's not sitting there making spreadsheets anymore. You can do that, and it's still a really effective way of doing things. But there are so many apps now that do all that stuff for you. You just link your accounts. Two that I use myself, Mint and Personal Capital. Those are both fantastic apps for budgeting, for just tracking your net worth and tracking, are you saving more than you're earning? How much money do you have coming in versus how much money you have going out? Those are two fantastic ones. But then the thing about the financial calculators, San Diego tax team, Bo Reinhard, a captain on our department, is the owner of San Diego tax team. On their website, which I'll link in the show notes, they have 1 million of these financial calculators. You just get in there, whether it's a 401k, whether it's a retirement calculator, or you want to track compounding interest or whatever it is. They have millions of them. Just go in there and start tracking some of these things. But the fact that you, Greg, are working with a financial advisor so early on in your career, taking those intentional steps, man, is just fantastic. And again, I'm so excited for what the future holds for you. But just kind of tying a bow on this thing, man, what would be one piece of advice you could give folks, whether they're brand new on the job in that new tiered retirement system, whether they've been around for 20 years or more approaching retirement? What's one piece of advice that you could give them?
Yeah, I think the biggest advice, that I've received and that I can pass on is that here we're talking about, investing, and using money, investing your money. One thing that we really need to focus on is investing in yourself. All of this stems from your education. It stems from your want and desire to succeed in the future. And I think one of the biggest things that we can do for ourselves is invest in our growth, invest in our knowledge, and watch these podcasts, look into it. You have so much opportunity just to go look up stuff, Google it and say, how can I do this? What are the benefits to funding my 401k? What are, the various benefits to different other options like real estate or thing that I can pass on is always try and grow personally. Whether it's on the fire department, trying to grow your skills, increase your knowledge and always become a better firefighter and better asset to the department. Financially, that's going to be, seeing a financial advisor, watching podcasts like this, taking new ideas and maybe pushing yourself to the next step and saying, I potentially can't afford to save this much more money, or maybe I can cut my spendings a little bit. And tracking, your retirement, seeing where it will go in the future, and not just hoping that 30 years from now you're going to sit down and say, oh, I'm making the decision to retire today. I think that's a lifelong decision that we all work towards. And, whether you start young or start a little older, it's still something you want to look out for and constantly watch. Just like yourself on the job, you watch your progression, you go to places you need to be, you learn things you need to, and you shoot to be the best person you can be. So that's all I got for you.
Oh, that's awesome, buddy. And I'll link to a couple of morning meetings I've had with financial advisors and some things that you really do want to look out for if you are interested in bringing one of them in on your team. But yeah, man, that was just fantastic. And I think with that, you got knocked down your first alarm there, bud.
All righty. How about it?
So, hey, Greg, if somebody's looking to learn more about you or your process and the way you do things, man, where could they find you?
Yeah, so you can just hit me up on email. If you find me around the stations, that's a great way to do it. Give me a call. But as far as my email, heidgreg1@gmail.com. That's HEIDGREG, the number 1@gmail.com. Shoot me whatever you got. I'd be happy to answer questions or happy to learn some new things from you guys. So I appreciate it.
That's perfect, buddy. I'll make sure to link to all that stuff in the show notes, man. And I just want to thank you for your time today, Greg. And man, spread the word because you are on the right track. And any of our guys here locally, if you get a chance to work with him, pick his brain on some of this stuff because he is thinking at a very high level. Don't let him get you on the ping pong table. I hear he's a fantastic player. But no,
Still got to do it.
Honestly, buddy, I do want to thank you for your time today, and keep doing what you're doing, man, because you're crushing it. Good job.
Thank you. I appreciate you doing this program, and I think it's an awesome way for all of us to learn and get together and talk about things that I think need to be covered. So, thanks again, Kyle.
All right, thanks again to Greg for meeting me here in the bullpen, man. He's got an inspiring story. Somebody that started out very young, 20 years old, getting down the path towards financial independence, and the thing that I heard coming through the most clearly was just how intentional he is. It is a choice that he's making to become financially literate, to get down that path, man. I just love that. If you'd like to learn more about Greg or you got questions for him, you can email him at heidegreg1@gmail.com. If you'd like to learn more about us, we're on Facebook at The Firehouse. That's f.i.r.e.house. On Instagram, the _fire_house. On LinkedIn, The Firehouse Investors, or any place you listen to podcasts. If you learned something today and you'd like to hear more, please like, share, and subscribe. But no matter what you do, take this information, go out there, and get some. Stay tuned.